Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Chris Gilbert, PwC's tax consulting strategy leader. Today, we're filming from PwC's 6th annual International Tax Conference here in California. Today, joining me to talk a little bit about what companies are doing with respect to their digital transformation efforts is Alex Voloshko. Alex, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
So we're hearing a lot in the marketplace about companies making massive capital investments with respect to their digital transformation overall. What are some of the things that we're seeing companies do in the marketplace?
Great question, Chris. So first, when I think about this question, a recent CEO survey comes to mind where, curiously, about 40% of the CEOs of our clients found that their business is at significant financial risk and may not, in fact, be viable within 10 years. And what the CEO said is, to prevent that from happening, they're all investing in a variety of transformational programs, of which digital is a big part of it. So the first thing I would note is there's a lot of that digital transformation investment happening. And it takes different shapes and sizes of companies, depending on the industry sector they're in, depending on the life cycle, whether the business, depending on what they're trying to do. Broadly, though, I would say there are three main things that these programs result in. One is generally some kind of a new commercial offering that is a lot of times digitally enabled, cloud delivered. A lot of times it's in the form of a service capability, software as a service, platform as a service, subscription model. So basically some kind of a commercial solution that is digitally enabled. Yeah. So that's one. Two, a lot of times it's a new digital channel. A common example is e-commerce. So companies are basically building out their e-commerce platforms to supply product or service or offerings to their customers. And the third example, it's some kind of an internal capability enabled by digital data analytics, technology, 5G communication protocols, et cetera. And based on what I've seen, like for most of companies out there, it's all three that are taking place. So a lot going on.
Well, and you and I both know that tax can play a big role in these transformations, whether it's helping manage risk overall and or creating value across the board, right? So as companies are thinking about this, what are some of the things that we probably want to be thinking about on the tax side?
It's definitely a big opportunity and the need for the chief tax officer to play in the space. Again, simplistically speaking, there's probably two things. One is a lot of times these programs result in new costs being incurred, which means we have to be thinking about, how those funded, what's the capital structure to fund those, where's cash coming from, how are those things treated for accounting purposes. Are there credits and incentives available? Is there a new footprint being put in place to staff these programs? So the first thing I would say is make sure we understand the downstream impacts of these programs from, entity, financial transactions, operating models, sort of transfer pricing perspective, and the list goes on, and making sure that we understand those impacts so there's no surprises, and surprises typically means something nasty happening that takes away from the benefit of these programs. So the first thing we would say is protect the base, make sure we identified all the costs, issues, whether it's withholding taxes, indirect tax, you name it, right? Yep. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is how can we help capture the benefit, the value of these programs tax efficiently, which means there's a real opportunity to monetize the benefit of these programs in a very kind of strategic, smart way.
Right, and to your point, there's a lot of opportunity here for us to help be kind of a pay force for some of these things in these programs across the board, right? Being at the table on day one. So, Alex, when we look at what companies are going through today, I mean, this is one of many things that tax departments are really focused on, right? Between Pillar 2, legislative changes, et cetera. So what are some of the things that we should be helping or companies should be thinking about, right, as they think about how to tackle these?
Yeah, it's a real issue of resources and capabilities, Chris. Like we're definitely seeing this at this conference where we're having meetings with our clients on the sidelines of the event, talking about just gazillion of things they're worried about just as part of their day job. And now we have this significant change in the business as a result of these programs that we're talking about. And so I think there's a couple of things. One is just the bandwidth question. how can we dedicate the right resources, which means typically planning capabilities to work with the business partners relative to whatever these programs are to make sure that tax is at the table in the right time, which means typically early on as these programs are being conceived and budgets are being put together. And so one is just to keep, resources question, but I think there is a broader capabilities question.
Yeah.
A lot of times, we as tax profession, I think, are a bit guilty of maybe being a little bit reactive or just accustomed to answering questions or just having more of a risk management sort of hat on. So this really requires us to be in there with the business partners. Just think about some of the examples we gave, whether it's a new offering, new channel, and new internal capabilities. That means our real business customer is a chief digital officer, a chief product officer, a chief supply chain officer, whatever this program is. So that means we have to speak the right language. We have to understand the business aspects of these programs and really be a true business partner. So again, It's a resources question, try to rebalance what's the highest and best use. And also it's a capability question. We need to upskill basically ourselves as a profession to play
that's
in this
great.
space.
Alex, thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
And as always, thank you for spending time with us. We'll see you next time.